Dear friends, welcome to our channel. We are very happy to share with you different stories about love and betrayal from around the world. So let's begin today's story journey. The moment my wife and her sister took over the company, they fired me. "We don't need lazy people like you," they said. I just smiled politely and turned to leave. The next day, their father demanded, "Why the hell did you fire him? Haven't you seen the contract?" When they saw the contract, they were stunned by its contents, because that contract was, "Autumn in Boston always comes unexpectedly." Jack stood outside the glass building of Moretti Tech, taking a deep breath as the cold wind stung his cheeks. He had just been fired by his own wife Emma and her sister Claire. Just a few hours ago, he was the business development director of this company, but now he was an outsider. "How ironic," Jack muttered, putting his company access card into his suit pocket. For 10 years, he had poured his heart and soul into this company, transforming a regional financial software provider into an internationally renowned tech enterprise. Now, he was being shown the door as if he were just an expendable ordinary employee. Jack wasn't blind to this day coming. Over the past 6 months, Emma's behavior had undergone subtle changes. She came home later and later, showed decreasing interest in family life, and suddenly set a new password on her phone that Jack didn't know. At first, he thought she was just under work pressure, until he noticed the way she interacted with Mark, the newly hired digital transformation consultant. I really didn't want to believe it, Jack thought as he walked toward the parking lot. He wasn't the type of husband who liked to pry into his wife's privacy, but Emma's changes were too obvious. Those suddenly appearing overtime, hours, mysterious weekend, company activities, and the sparkle in her eyes whenever she mentioned Mark. Jack started the car, recalling how he met Emma. 8 years ago, he was hired as a promising business consultant by Emma's father Richard to help the company expand into international markets. Richard was an old-school entrepreneur who had built Moretti Tech from scratch, now one of Boston's most successful financial software companies. Emma was in charge of the marketing department at the time, smart, energetic, and inheriting her father's business acumen. They quickly fell in love while working together and married a year later. Jack joined the Moretti family, not just as a son-in-law, but as a key figure in the company. "We need to fire Jack," Claire told Emma in her luxury Back Bay apartment 6 months ago. "Father's health is deteriorating, and the board needs to see a strong succession plan. As long as Jack remains in that position, the board will always view him as a potential CEO candidate instead of us." Claire was 3 years older than Emma and had always resented her father's favoritism toward Emma and Jack. Although she was the chief operating officer, she knew Richard admired Jack's strategic thinking and business talent more. Emma swirled the wine in her glass, thoughtful. "I don't know, Claire. Jack has contributed so much to the company. During the financial crisis 5 years ago, he brought in those crucial investors and developed the patented technology we now lead with." "That's all the more reason to do it," Claire insisted. "He's received enough recognition and compensation. It's time for the Moretti family to regain control. Don't you find it strange that father always relies so heavily on Jack, as if we're incapable of managing our own family business?" Emma didn't answer. In fact, her attention had already been diverted by someone else. Mark Wilson, the consultant hired 6 months ago to lead the company's digital transformation project. Mark was intelligent, charming, and most importantly, he saw Emma differently. "He doesn't see Richard Moretti's daughter or Jack's wife," Emma once described to her best friend. "He sees just Emma, a talented woman." Emma never thought she would have an affair. Her marriage to Jack appeared perfect on the surface. They were Boston's business golden couple, living in a beautiful townhouse in Beacon Hill, with vacation photos garnering hundreds of likes on social media. But deep down, Emma always had a lingering sense of emptiness, an identity crisis. "I've always been someone's daughter, someone's wife," she told Mark one evening at a bar near the office after their third martini while discussing the project. "Sometimes I wonder who I am without these labels." Mark looked at her intently, as if truly pondering the question. "I think you're a talented woman trapped in other people's expectations," he said, reaching out to gently touch her hand. "You deserve more." It was at that moment that boundaries were crossed. Initially, it was just a few drinks after work, then accidental weekend encounters, and finally it evolved into secret afternoon rendezvous and passionate moments in hotel rooms. Emma told herself it was temporary, just a way for her to find herself again. Meanwhile, Jack began to notice changes in his wife. Emma no longer shared company matters with him as before, immediately rushed to shower when she got home, and lost interest in the weekend activities they used to enjoy. "Are you okay lately?" Jack asked one evening after Emma missed their anniversary dinner again due to an emergency meeting. "Of course, just work pressure," Emma replied, avoiding his gaze. "This digital transformation project is really draining." Jack nodded, not pressing further. He respected Emma's space, believing she would talk to him when she was ready. This had always been their way. Mutual trust, giving each other room to grow. However, things didn't improve. Emma's relationship with Mark deepened, while Claire constantly whispered in her ear that Jack was an obstacle to the company's progress. "Look at his department," Claire would say. "Too conservative, can't keep up with industry changes. We need innovative thinkers like Mark." Richard's health took a sharp downturn during this time. A minor heart attack forced him to reduce his workload and gradually step back. He trusted Jack, putting him in charge of more day-to-day decisions, which further angered Claire. "He should let us take over," Claire told Emma. "We are the Moretti family bloodline." Emma found herself caught in the middle, between the new direction represented by her sister and lover and the tradition represented by her father and husband. Under Mark's encouragement, she began to believe change was necessary, that Jack's management style was indeed too cautious. The critical moment finally came on a Thursday afternoon. Richard was hospitalized again due to heart problems, and the board held an emergency meeting to discuss temporary leadership arrangements. Claire proposed that she and Emma take joint responsibility, redistributing Jack's duties to other company executives. "Leadership by family members is most appropriate," Claire told the board, with Emma nodding in agreement. To their surprise, the board agreed to this arrangement without much objection. When Jack learned of the situation, he accepted it calmly. "I understand," he told the board members. "Stability is most important in this situation." Emma had expected to see anger or disappointment from her husband, but Jack's extraordinary calmness unsettled her. 2 weeks later, when Richard recovered enough to briefly return to the office, Emma and Claire decided to take action. They gathered the executive team to announce the company restructuring plan, which included eliminating Jack's position. "We believe the business development department needs a new direction," Emma said in the meeting, avoiding Jack's gaze. "We appreciate Jack's contributions over the years, but the company now needs a more aggressive growth strategy." Jack sat in a corner of the conference room, expressionless as he listened to the news of his dismissal. When Emma announced that Mark would continue leading the digital transformation project as an external consultant, with hints he might take on a more permanent role, Jack noticed the fleeting smile on her face. After the meeting, Emma and Claire called Jack into a small conference room. "We hope this transition can be as smooth as possible," Claire said, her tone professional but cold. "Yes," Emma added, her voice slightly nervous. "We've prepared a decent severance package." Jack looked at the sisters, especially his wife, with a calm smile on his face. "We don't need lazy people like you," Claire finally said, clearly to emphasize her newfound power. Jack just smiled politely and turned to leave the office. The next day, Richard appeared at the company, his face red with anger. He stormed directly into Emma and Claire's office. "Why the hell did you fire Jack?" he roared, the first time the sisters had seen their father so furious. "Haven't you seen the contract?" Emma and Claire looked at each other in confusion. "What contract?" Emma asked, suddenly feeling uneasy. Richard shook his head and pulled out a document from his briefcase. 5 years ago, when the company was on the brink of bankruptcy, Jack used his personal connections to bring in those life-saving investors. He also developed the patented technology we now lead with. In return, I gave him 30% of the company's shares and special contract terms. Emma felt her blood freeze in her veins. 30%? That's impossible. Very possible. Richard pushed the contract in front of his daughters. Any decision about firing him requires a supermajority vote, including his own shares. And if he's wrongfully dismissed, the company can no longer use his patented technology unless it pays substantial licensing fees. Claire hurriedly flipped through the document, her face growing increasingly pale. But the board approved. The board only knew Jack agreed to step back from management, Richard interrupted. "They didn't know you were actually firing him." Jack told me everything, and he's contacted his lawyers. Emma felt a wave of nausea. Why didn't he tell me about this? Richard looked sadly at his younger daughter. Maybe because he thought you would stand by him, or he believed you would do the right thing. Honestly, Emma, I don't know what to believe anymore. That evening, Emma returned to her and Jack's home to find her husband packing his bags. Jack, she stood at the bedroom doorway, her voice trembling. We need to talk. Jack continued sorting his shirts without looking up. About what? About your affair with Mark? Or about you and Claire plotting to push me out of the company I helped build? Emma felt dizzy. You knew? I've always known, Emma. Jack finally turned to her, his eyes showing not anger but deep disappointment. But I hoped you would tell me yourself. Hoped it was just a mistake. Hoped our marriage meant something to you. Jack, I'm so sorry. Emma stepped forward, tears welling up. I don't know why this happened. Mark just made me feel special? Important? Jack shook his head. I always respected you, supported your career, loved all of you. But clearly that wasn't enough. We can fix this, Emma pleaded. I'll end things with Mark. I'll tell the board the truth. Please, give me a chance. Jack zipped up his suitcase, his expression calm but resolute. It's too late, Emma. I've contacted my lawyer. I'll exercise my contractual rights to protect my interests, but I won't destroy your father's company. As for our marriage, it's over. You can't just leave, Emma said desperately. Like you couldn't just betray me? Jack countered, then picked up his suitcase and walked toward the door. By the way, I was never lazy. I just chose to put my energy into things that truly mattered. I'm sorry you and Claire couldn't see that. As Jack's car drove away from their shared home, Emma stood on the porch, realizing she might have lost more than she imagined. Meanwhile, across town, Claire was calling Mark, warning him of the coming storm. This is much more complicated than we thought, she told him. Jack owns 30% of the company and key patents. If we don't handle this carefully, the entire company could be at risk. Mark was silent for a moment. Does Emma know? About our plan. Claire sighed. She knows we wanted to take the company in a new direction. What she doesn't know is that once we controlled the company, your consulting firm would get exclusive contracts, and you would be handsomely rewarded for it. We need to reassess, Mark said, the warmth in his voice gone, replaced by cool calculation. If Jack really has these powers, we need to find a way to reach a settlement with him. Or find a way around him, Claire replied, determination flashing in her eyes. I won't let an outsider ruin my father's company. As night fell over Boston, no one knew what storm the coming days would bring. Jack stayed alone in a downtown hotel suite, beginning to plan his next move. Emma cried in their empty home, grieving the loss of her husband and ashamed of her actions. Claire and Mark each calculated how to protect their own interests. And Richard sat in his hospital bed, pondering how his family and company had come to this point. No one anticipated how complicated things would become, nor did anyone realize how heavy the cost of betrayal would be. Part 2. Jack didn't take immediate action. As a strategist, he knew emotional reactions would only bring more chaos. Instead, he spent a week consulting lawyers, evaluating his options, and preparing for the coming legal and business warfare. Meanwhile, the atmosphere within Moretti Tech grew tense. Emma and Claire tried to assure the executive team that everything was under control, but rumors had already begun to spread. When word got out that Jack actually owned a substantial share of the company and controlled key technology patents, employees began to worry about the company's future. We need to take action, Claire told Emma during an emergency meeting. Employees are anxious. Customers are starting to ask what's happening. We need to show leadership. Emma looked haggard. Since Jack left, she had barely been able to sleep. Her marriage was crumbling. The company she helped build was in danger, and it was all because of her choices. We should try to negotiate with Jack, she suggested. Maybe we can reach some kind of agreement. Claire shook her head. Do you really think he'll cooperate with us after you betrayed him? We need a tougher approach. I've already asked the legal team to investigate how to challenge the validity of that contract. Meanwhile, Mark became increasingly anxious. His consulting firm had heard about the turmoil at Moretti Tech and began questioning his professional judgment. When Emma tried to contact him for support, he became distant. I think we should pause our personal relationship, he told her during a tense phone call. The situation is too complicated now, and we both need to focus on our professional reputations. Emma felt betrayed a second time. So this was all just a career opportunity for you, she challenged. Emma, don't be like that, Mark sighed. There were real feelings between us, but the risks are too high now. If it's discovered our relationship began while I was a company consultant, my career would be over. We need to handle this intelligently. After hanging up, Emma finally realized she had been deceiving herself. Mark had never seen her as he claimed, as an individual separate from her family and husband. What he saw was a pathway into Moretti Tech, an opportunity to advance his career. On the 10th day, Jack formally took action. His lawyers sent the board a detailed legal document outlining his ownership rights and patent control. The document clearly stated that if his dismissal was upheld, the company would have to immediately stop using his patented technology, which would cripple Moretti Tech's core products. The board quickly convened an informal meeting, which Richard insisted on attending despite his poor health. We need to understand the actual situation, a senior director said. If Jack's claims are valid, we face a real threat. Richard nodded. The contract is legally binding. I had the best lawyers draft it to ensure Jack's contributions were protected. Why? Claire questioned her father. Why give an outsider so much power? Richard looked at his elder daughter, disappointment in his eyes. Jack was never an outsider. He's part of this family, and his contributions to the company are far greater than you're willing to admit. During the financial crisis 5 years ago, it was he who took personal risks to convince investors to stay. It was he who worked day and night to develop that patent that saved us. Where were you then, Claire? Oh, right. You were busy vacationing in Europe, saying you needed time to think about your career direction. Claire blushed, but stood her ground. What about Emma? She's been working for the company too. Yes, she has, Richard acknowledged. Which is why I never imagined she would be involved in such a scheme. He looked painfully at his younger daughter. Emma, tell me the truth. Is this really all about the company? Or are there other factors? Emma couldn't meet her father's eyes. The silence in the room told Richard everything he needed to know. I see, he said quietly. That consultant, isn't it? The board members exchanged glances, suddenly realizing this wasn't just a business dispute, but a family tragedy. At the end of the meeting, the board unanimously agreed they needed to negotiate with Jack. They authorized Richard to act as intermediary, as he was the only one Jack might still be willing to talk to. The next day, Jack agreed to meet with Richard at a neutral law firm. The two men sat alone in the conference room, the atmosphere heavy. I'm sorry things have come to this, Richard said straightforwardly. I never thought I'd see my family divided like this. Jack nodded, his expression serious but calm. Neither did I, Richard. But we must now face reality. What do you want, Jack? Richard asked directly. Do you want revenge? Jack shook his head. I've never been one to seek revenge. What I want is fairness. I invested 10 years of my life helping build this company. The technology one developed and the client relationships I established are valuable. I just want to ensure these contributions are recognized. Richard studied his son-in-law, or soon-to-be ex-son-in-law's face. Emma made a terrible mistake. She regrets it. I believe she regrets getting caught, Jack replied calmly. But this isn't just about her affair. She and Claire conspired to kick me out of the company I helped build. They took advantage of your illness. This wasn't impulsive, Richard. It was a calculated betrayal. Richard couldn't argue with that. After hours of negotiation, they reached a framework agreement. Jack would retain his shares but resign from management positions. The company would continue using his patents but pay reasonable licensing fees. And the board would be restructured to ensure balance between family members and independent directors. As Richard was leaving, he stopped to ask one final question. Is there any possibility between you and Emma? Jack's expression became more resolute. No, Richard. Some betrayals can't be forgiven. I've filed for divorce. My lawyer will contact her. In the following weeks, things rapidly deteriorated. A curious employee accidentally discovered suggestive emails between Emma and Mark and spread the news within the company. Soon, the entire company knew that Emma had not only betrayed her husband, but had an affair with an external consultant, all while she and Claire were trying to restructure the company. This news dealt a fatal blow to Emma's reputation. The executive team began questioning her judgment, and clients became uncomfortable dealing with her. Mark's consulting company quickly terminated his contract after learning of the situation, fearing association with such a scandal would damage their reputation. Claire also found herself in a difficult position. When employees learned of her role in the scheme, many long-term staff began openly questioning her leadership abilities. Several key clients threatened to withdraw their business unless the company stabilized. Richard was forced to step in again, temporarily taking over management. In an all-staff meeting, he announced a transition plan, hiring an interim CEO while the board searched for a permanent solution. He also confirmed that Jack would continue to be involved in major decisions as a principal shareholder but would no longer hold a management position. "Our company is going through a difficult time," Richard told the employees. "But I believe we can get through it. Our core products and services remain the best in the industry, and our team remains excellent." Everyone present noticed Emma and Claire standing aside, looking embarrassed. Jack wasn't present, but his influence was clearly felt in everyone's minds. The divorce proceedings were much harder than Emma had anticipated. With Jack having solid documentation proving her infidelity and business misconduct, her negotiating position was very weak. On her lawyer's advice, she agreed to a settlement that let her keep the family home but relinquish most of their joint assets. Worse still, her personal life became a nightmare. Boston's business circle was small, and soon everyone had heard the story. Her former friends began to distance themselves, and social event invitations decreased. Mark cut off contact completely, focusing on salvaging his own career. On a cold winter afternoon, Emma ran into Jack at a coffee shop near the company. He looked good, wearing a well-tailored suit, healthy complexion, and a calmness in his eyes she hadn't seen in a long time. "Jack," she hesitantly greeted him. "You look good." "Thank you," he replied politely but distantly. "How are you?" "Difficult," she said honestly. "But I deserve it." Jack didn't deny this. "I heard the board will announce new leadership next week." Emma nodded. "Yes, I've been demoted and now only lead a small marketing team." Claire was asked to take leave for a while. After an awkward silence, Emma couldn't help but ask, "Do you hate me?" Jack considered the question. "I don't hate you, Emma. Hate requires too much energy, and I'd rather use that energy on constructive things. But I won't forgive you either. Some things, once done, cannot be undone." "I'm really sorry," Emma said softly, tears in her eyes. "I ruined everything." "Yes, you did," Jack said bluntly. "But life goes on. I just hope you learn from this." As Jack prepared to leave, he added, "By the way, I'm starting a new company, working with several former clients. Richard has agreed that I can develop my ideas as long as I don't directly compete with Moretti Tech." Emma felt a complex mix of jealousy and regret. "You've always been talented. I'm sure you'll be successful." Jack just nodded and left, leaving Emma to contemplate all she had lost. Later that month, Mark tried to reconnect with Emma, but not for romantic reasons. His career was at a low point, and he desperately needed to rebuild connections. "I've been thinking about what happened between us," he said on the phone. "Maybe we could have dinner and talk about future possibilities?" Emma almost laughed. "Really, Mark? After everything fell apart, you contact me now because you need help?" I think I finally understand how Jack felt. She hung up, feeling a strange sense of relief. 6 months later, Moretti Tech announced the hiring of an experienced external CEO. Under Richard's guidance, the board was restructured, balancing family influence and professional management. Emma continued working at the company, but mainly out of respect for her father. She understood she would never be trusted as before. Claire eventually left the company, choosing to start fresh in another city. The relationship between the sisters became distant, maintaining only surface politeness at family occasions. Jack's new venture achieved initial success, attracting venture capital and industry attention. He remained a major shareholder in Moretti Tech, but limited daily interactions to necessary business discussions. When Emma encountered him at company events, they would politely greet each other and then walk away, like two people who were once intimate but now strangers. As for Mark, his career took a major downer. After losing the Moretti Tech contract, he found it difficult to find clients of similar scale. Business circle rumors were more unfavorable to him, suggesting he used an extramarital affair for business gain. His consulting firm marginalized him, and eventually he was forced to accept a lower-level position, far from the management track he once aspired to. A year later, in spring, Richard hosted a small gathering at his home in Boston suburbs to celebrate his improved health. Jack attended, maintaining a friendly relationship with his former father-in-law. Emma was also there, watching her ex-husband chat easily with guests, occasionally hearing his hearty laugh. "He looks happy," Richard said, walking up to Emma. "Yes," Emma admitted, feeling a familiar pain. "He's moved on." "And you?" Richard gently asked. Emma recalled the difficult journey of the past year: social isolation, career setbacks, and deep reflection on her actions. "I'm learning," she finally said. "Learning to take responsibility for my choices. Learning to find self-worth without depending on others." Richard patted his daughter's hand. "It's a hard lesson, but perhaps a necessary one." Across the party, Jack was talking with an old friend, occasionally glancing toward Emma. Although he had found a way forward, the internal scars remained. He didn't regret his decisions: ending the marriage, restructuring his relationship with the company, starting a new venture. Betrayal had taught him the true value of trust and how to protect himself from harm. As night fell over Boston and the city lights came on one by one, Jack realized some things could never return to how they were before, but that wasn't necessarily bad. Emma, standing at the other end of the garden, had a similar realization. She had lost a marriage, damaged her reputation, weakened family relationships, but she was also beginning to understand her true self, even if the process was painful and slow. Mark sat alone in a small apartment across town, facing rejection email after rejection email on his laptop, realizing that momentary satisfaction could never compensate for long-term reputation damage. For everyone, life continued forward, bearing the mark of betrayal, reminding each person of the consequences of choices and how trust, once broken, is almost impossible to rebuild. There are no perfect endings, only the inevitability of continuing to live and the possibility of learning from mistakes, even the most painful ones. If this story resonated with you, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more great content. We look forward to seeing you in our next story.